Hello, good evening, and Pleiadian sisters here. How may we be of service to you this evening?
Thank you for coming. We're very grateful for you to come.
You're very welcome.
Well, I'm just curious how it's going with the rise in consciousness on the planet. Is it getting momentum? Is the pace speeding up?
Well, we're unsure of what comparison you're drawing.
Compared to 10 years ago?
There is and will continue to be increased momentum towards enlightenment and ascension.
Yes, I guess how I came up with that was because, according to David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, below 200 is negative and above 200 is positive, and supposedly at the convergence, whatever it is, in the 89, somewhere, some astrological event happened, and supposedly after that the consciousness of the planet finally went from below 200 negative into and over 200, like, I don't know, 201 or something. But somewhere along the line I heard that the positive grows much, much faster than the negative, and so I guess looking at it that way, then it would be, are more and more people waking up today than they did 5 years ago, than they did 10 years ago, etc., etc. Is the momentum picking up? Are we gaining momentum? Is the positive growing faster and faster? Is it true that the positive...
The global level of consciousness is around 226 at this time.
Yeah.
Now, the level of consciousness can be increased by those of lower levels of consciousness beginning to awaken and move upward. But it can also be increased by 1 or 2 or 10 or 20, reaching higher levels of consciousness. All of the effects are exponential, so it's not necessarily a numbers game, you see. But we will say this in response to your question. Because the global level of consciousness is where it is, there at 226, one of the simplest things that you can do to assist is to encourage anyone who is showing courage and acknowledge any small acts of courage that any soul takes with upward momentum. Being at the global level of courage, speak to those who have been afraid, in despair, anxious, depressed, grieving, sad. Any small movements they make towards courage, towards self-care, get behind that. That could be very, very simple things. For instance, if you are working with a woman whose partner wants her to be eternally young and vibrant and beautiful and youthful, and she makes a very small move, let's say, for instance, to stop dyeing her hair. That could be for her, a large step in the direction of courage, you see. And so get behind that.
Okay, has the level of consciousness gone down? Does it fluctuate?
COVID brought down the global level of consciousness to a great degree, but it is beginning to ascend again, move forward in the right direction.
Yeah, I was going to ask about COVID. How about the war in Ukraine? Did that bring things down?
The global level of consciousness?
Yes.
Yes. For those who have the determination and feel so led, it is important for some to completely disconnect from lower aspects of global consciousness in order to not be influenced and in order to begin to raise the global consciousness again. In other words, some highly enlightened souls would best serve global consciousness by not listening to the news at all, by being completely disconnected from the lower astral planes and lower levels of consciousness, and instead focusing on the tasks they are given in meditation and connection to source and sources of help.
Yes, I'm always telling patients not to look at the news.
There are some who live monastic lives of meditation that add more than we can say. To the energetic field around the planet. Now, so this is how you begin to assist in awakening with each one that stands in front of you. You evaluate where they are on this scale of consciousness, and you consciously do what you can to influence them to the next level. For instance, in the story you were just engaging, in the story, the young man is overcome with anger. And so the next level above anger is pride. And so when the young man failed to display his anger, his wrath, it is appropriate to be proud of him and to celebrate. That is how you help to move him up the scale of consciousness. And if one in front of you is very sad, the way that you move them towards enlightenment is to move them up the scale to anger and help them to get in touch with and express their anger. And this is the way, one by one person at a time, helping people to move up the scale and then maintain, giving them tools, wisdom and understanding to maintain that next level of consciousness. But you see, old souls and enlightened souls don't work in this manner out of lack of understanding and out of an ignorance, we will say. For instance, an old soul might prefer not to deal with someone who is very sad or very angry. Or they might insist that that one simply love. But this is not sustainable for the one that is at the lower levels of consciousness. What is sustainable is for them to begin to move to the next level of consciousness and then begin to be able to sustain that space. For instance, we heard recently a comment that one, well, we would prefer to have one who operates in love, unconditional love from the heart. But if that is not the next level of consciousness for that one, it is not reasonable to have that expectation.
Yeah.
It is admirable and it is a goal for sure, but it is not reasonable.
Can you plant seeds though?
Certainly. And the way one comes into the experience of unconditional love is for you to give them unconditional love.
Yes.
And so what each one needs to move up the scale of consciousness is a new experience. Teaching will not bring it. Talk will not bring it. Exposure will not bring it. The only thing that will bring it is experience. And so as we were riding through the vessel this week, many people are unconsciously engaging lots of spiritual talk and spiritual listening and spiritual activity and spiritual learning, and they are doing it unconsciously in order to avoid facing the absence of a real spiritual experience.